Welcome to Market Buzz. I'm Greg Schnell, the Canadian technician and host of the Market Buzz. Each show we do a deep dive into different industries using weekly charts to see what is happening on a long timeline. Please follow me on Twitter at Schnell Investor, and you can also find my blogs on gregschnell.com as well as StockCharts.com. Well, we're going to cover off some interesting stuff today. We're going to focus on all about the home. I was surfing the internet the other day looking at some new building construction in Arizona, and basically every time you go to a new website, that starts a rabbit hole where you just keep going down through different things. Anyway, that rolled me into my home builders chart list. And it's got a few other things in there, home supply and home interiors. But I think it's a pretty interesting list to go through. Diana Olick from CNBC posted on Twitter this morning that the average house price cost increased just due to lumber change. Lumber's almost $1,000 now. So just due to the change in the price of lumber, adds $24,000 to the price of a home. That's real. That's a big number. Anyway, if you're interested in anything on the gregschnell.com website, it's constantly improving. I have a March Madness sale going on. You can save $363 there and get an annual membership at gregschnell.com/explore. So it's about 40% off and would be $497 total. And again, we've got Dwight works on the website with me. We put out trade setups every day, a monthly recorded conference call for you to participate, weekly video, a weekly newsletter, and some pretty well-respected analysis. I think you'll agree there's lots of good ideas there. And as always, thank you for watching. So I'm going to get us to jump into something a little different here. And what I want to show you is a little video for an event going on March the 22nd. Should be an absolute blast. Just be careful, maybe control the volume here. It comes out a little bit loud. Doesn't that look fun? That looks like it will be an absolute blast. So Tom Boley, a good friend of mine, him and I can debate all the time. So anyway, I would be encouraged if you'll join us for that event. It should be a blast. Now, why isn't this switching for me? Just drop this out of here. And let's go down here and see if that'll help. There we go. Okay, so what I wanted to show today, let's briefly start off just with a look at where the markets are. I want to focus a little bit on the NASDAQ and the NASDAQ 100. But here's the NASDAQ today, and it rallied off the open and then basically drifted lower throughout the day, testing the high of March the 1st. What that looks like on a daily chart, we're trying to get back through the 50-day moving average, and some of the bigger names were down a little bit today. So still want to figure out if the NASDAQ is going to make it back up through this or it's going to stall here. Again, I still think we have to be in bullish mode with all of the stimulus coming at us, so I don't really want to be too negative. Volume on the NASDAQ 100 has been under the average for the last 2 or 3 days now. No big deal. But when we compare that with the NASDAQ composite, of course, that had the actual huge move in volume in the middle of January and February there. So here we are with the 60-minute view, basically just rallied up and closed flat on the day. Slightly above the 50-day moving average. But the point I want to make here is we had these two extreme volume days up over 10 billion 3 times towards the end of January and mid-February. We were tracking around 4 billion back in the summer. And so now what we're seeing here is a real lowering in the volume profile, and this is the lowest day going back to this year for the NASDAQ, which I think is quite interesting. So maybe the euphoria is starting to die off. The real question we want to watch for, or the real thing I want to watch for, is can the Can the NASDAQ composite start to rally back up above here? And again, it hardly looks damaged when you look on the weekly chart, but it's this volume profile on a weekly basis from 10 billion shares a week to 40 billion shares a week that was, I think, a little bit crazy. So this was 2019. Even the summer in here was 4 billion shares a day, totaling 20 billion shares a week. And now those January, February levels are pretty heady. And now we're coming off that. This is only a 2-day bar, so let's not count that totally. But you can see the big change in the volume trend here on the NASDAQ mostly. Anyway, the point is we're struggling with the 50-day moving average on the NASDAQ composite. On the S&P 500, this level right here, we broke above the 39.50, and now we're just trying to hold up there. So we'll see if the market's got any real momentum here. I keep watching this downward trend. I don't want to see that roll over again under here after touching zero. That just doesn't have a good look to me. So I want to be a little more cautious about that. But in general, I still want to be, I'm still trying to find the right sectors to be in. So with that, I want to cover off the home construction area. So in this chart list, there's a little bit of Home Depot and renovation hardware, restoration hardware, Ethanol, and some other names like that. But again, what are we looking for? We're looking for charts showing signs of new breakouts or whatever. And when I look at this, it's not horrible. It's just not, this chart hasn't done anything for years. And it looks like it's right back to not doing anything for years again. Scooter ranking right in here is a little bit surprising. I think what I'm most surprised at is that it hasn't got any real bullish thrust when you consider the sector that it's in, because that has been, this growth area has been really strong for the market. In general, this whole housing related issue with everybody staying home. When we look at new home company, this again, just draw a horizontal trend line in here, and what do you get? You get a flat stock. So nothing really to report on that one. A little bit quiet. Whoops, sorry. We'll go on to the next chart here. So here's KB Homes, and the home builders have been doing pretty well. I will say, one of the things I like about the scooter ranking, which is this indicator at the top, it's the only indicator that tells you how things are doing compared to its peers. And it gives you an actual percentage. So this is in the mid-cap stock market space. But what you can see is the stock is performing right around 50%. So for all of the discussion about how on fire these stocks are, haven't really gone anywhere. Now, this is a pretty bullish setup here. I like this. Lots of times you'll see this turn and break out to the upside. That's what I'd be watching for here, but the momentum's pretty weak. It's basically performing in line with the S&P 500. And on the PPO, not really a whole bunch going on here. So when we go to Beazer Homes, this one looks a little bit better. You can see a sudden spike up here and then rolled right back down as it was trying to break through, but wobbled sideways. So every now and then it kind of gets a jolt in the arm, a shot in the arm, and then tries to go higher. Nothing really great here. I will say the PPO is still fine, and the scooter ranking has stayed up a little bit stronger than the prior chart. Taylor Morrison Homes, this one hasn't really broken out, which I think, whoops, that's not what I want to do. We'll just delete that. And then I just want to put a horizontal line on here. There's nothing really wonderful about this stock just yet. So that surprises me just because this is in such a good space in the market. MDC Holdings, up and to the right, that one's good. Scooter ranking up around 70, so at least it's got some heartbeat. It's performing better than 70% of the stocks. That looks pretty good. TriPoint Homes, this one again, another home builder. For all the talk about how great they are, it's been surprising. Now, That's at $20, and you could just see rally, fail, rally, and just stuck right here. Scooter ranking down around 20. That's pretty weak. So not really great on that level. Just looks pretty average, I think. Now there are some charts in here that are more exciting. This is one here, Skyline. And what we see on this one is the breakout. And now we want to see this consolidate and then start to work its way higher. So until we see that that thrust up, it's a pretty average stock, and hasn't done anything for 3 years, so it makes it kind of hard to hold. Looking at MHO, again, here's another stock just stuck at, call it $55, and I'm just showing you different ways to mark up the chart. So here's a solid line and blue. How's that? Okay, so in this case, I've used the horizontal line tool down here, and prior I was using the annotation tool. So the goal is just to try and keep your charts relatively simple, but show the trend that you want to define. In this case, perhaps I'm using a trend line. It defaults to this setting. So I've got a trend line, a vertical, a horizontal. So sometimes I'll bounce between these. This time, this uptrend looks okay. PPO's holding up at 10%. That's pretty nice. Scooter ranking stuck around 50. So, just considering all of the talk on the TV, it hasn't been that great in terms of outperformance. Another thing to look at would be something like, how does it compare to the S&P 500? Well, only in the last 2 months has it really started to outperform the S&P 500. And by that, the scooter ranking just says your average. It's at roughly 50%. So it's not doing anything more than any of the other stocks in the group. And again, in this case, it's a small cap group. So that's small caps from across industries and sectors, not just in this home construction area. But at least the chart's trending higher. I like that. Pulte Group. This one I really expected to be doing well with all of the discussion about home builders. Okay, so we can go with horizontal line. That's going to snap a line all the way across. Don't need the line all the way across, so sometimes rather than do that, we would just go with a trend line and just draw it in a, for a shorter distance. So it's whatever tool you want to use there. Just pick the different ones. Anyway, scooter ranking down around 30. That's not great. 70% of the stocks in the market are doing better than that particular stock. Here's Toll Brothers, and it's trending nicely higher. Nothing crazy. Looks pretty good. There was a big, huge base here, and it's just starting to work its way out of. So maybe these are going to start to accelerate. I just don't have a feel that it wants to get going. In a scooter ranking around 50, pretty average. Lennar. So what we see on this one, a couple of things I don't like. I don't like this lower momentum on the next peak here. And this I could just push up a little bit more like that. And so now we've kind of got a channel going here. We could just take and duplicate that. So that's a Control D or Command D. And just move this up to the upper level. Perhaps that's the channel we're in, but momentum seems to be saying higher high here, lower high in momentum, a little bit cautionary. LGI Homes. So this just broke out to new highs. That looks good. I like the PPO turning up around 0, so lots of things to like here. So I like that little breakout as price starts to go. That looks good. Meritage Homes. A little pullback here, PPO right at 0, so perhaps this can start to get some thrust going. I would either draw it as a downtrend line like this, or a breakout of some sort of a base in there. Anyway, I think I'll just leave it with the downtrend line. PPO's, or the scooter ranking is pretty weak at 10%. PPO is trying to turn up right at 0. And again, sometimes it's hard to see behind this histogram at the bottom. So go over here on the left, and the first number is the black line, the second number is the signal line, and the third number is the difference between the two. So when it's negative, the PPO is still below its signal, and when it's positive, it's above its signal line. Okay, so we're working through here Hovnanian. Now this is a nice chart. This is the kind of thing that we're looking for. We're wanting to see these absolutely explode to the upside. And so as we come into April, which will be another earnings period, we need to watch the behavior of these stocks and see if they can actually start firing it up. Again, I would have thought they were all kind of going like this, considering all the talk about how good home building is going and how the pricing is going, and everybody wants to be bullish home builders. The nice part on this one was once it got a breakout. Let me just not a call out. There we go. Once we got a breakout, it was very bullish. Here it just kept running. So we need to keep watching these stocks. But notice the scooter ranking, showing this being a much more powerful chart, getting above 75, my blue line here, and then just staying above it for most of the last 2 years. That's pretty solid. Anyway, it looks good. This one continues to trend. It would be interesting to see what they're doing so right compared to the others. Here's DR Horton. And on this particular one, this one's setting up for that similar breakout that we just saw on Hovnanian. And the reason I want to watch it here, we've got this sort of uptrending wedge. And now what I'd like to see is that it finally just kind of starts and gets really on a roll, maybe something like this back here. If the area is going to start to take off. Now you've got a PPO downtrend, and I've got a place to anchor my second point on. And what I mean by anchor a second point, so you kind of want it to come down, bounce, and either cross down on the signal line, so you've got a peak there, or in this case came down, touched, and took off. So it gives me a place to anchor my line, rather than say over here I'm just going to have it floating in space until it gets to this point. So what I want to watch for now is, can this start to reaccelerate up, kind of like it did in here. Anyway, this would be interesting to see. The scooter ranking is pretty weak, right around 50%. So if all of these names are going to start to turn up here, this would be about the time. It's been a year. So the comparables are back to that February, March, April timeframe. AeroGrow, home improvement retailer. I think this one's in the, trying to think of the word for it. The greenhouse is basically marijuana growing equipment, I think. And that's just a guess, but I'm pretty sure it's something like that, because I think I also have the same name in my marijuana list. But you can see sitting here around $3, not really doing much. Greenhouses was the word I was thinking of, but I was also thinking of hydroponics and stuff like that, other types of growth. So here's Beacon Roofing Supply. I love this chart. This is nice and steady. Look at the scooter ranking holding around 75. Bullish, smooth out performance of the S&P 500. Not a lot of volatility in the stock. Climbs relatively smoothly, so I like that. What's not to like? A little bit hard to buy it here on a stretch this far away, but this breakout of $40 here. Again, if you're going to build all these buildings, you're going to put roofs on them. Here's Home Depot. What we see on the Home Depot chart is it's going sideways, and again, we're coming into their peak season, so I like that. Touching down around zero, I would expect it to start to bounce out of here. That's what it looks like it tried to do after going below both the 10-week and 40-week, and now they're back above. Any break of this sort of 285 or so trend line in here, I think I'd want to be a buyer on any breakout to the upside there. Full stochastic has already turned. There's a few signals on here I like. This has already turned up. I like the fact that the downtrend on relative strength compared to the S&P 500 is trying to break. And one of the other areas I like is when you get down here into the bottom, when the stock performs poorly and then starts to reaccelerate and actually starts to outperform other stocks, that's usually a pretty good thing to see, and I want to watch for that kind of behavior. Now, Home Depot, just in general, is typically better than 75% of the stocks in the market, so this might just end up being a gift. Or perhaps people are thinking there's not going to be a lot of home construction or home reno now that the pandemic's over, and people are just going to kind of walk away from their houses and go spend money elsewhere. That might be the trade that is setting up here, but so far, this chart has all the makings to me of a nice place to look for an entry. I like the pullback to zero, and then any sort of acceleration out of that level should be nice. Looking at Floor and Decor Holdings, what I don't like here is it's pretty much rolling over. It's had a nice run, but now to me, if I was to put a different annotation on the chart, I'd probably draw it like this. And just how it just seems to be doming. And again, it could break out to the upside. That would probably be a better buy signal. When you're in a bull market, let's just get this trend line. When you're in a bull market, you want to see it bounce around this 50 level. And when you're in a bear market, it typically stalls there. So we just want to see if it's got the strength to bounce. We've broken the relative strength uptrend, which I don't really like. Usually right here is a sell signal for me. And when I see this full stochastic come down and it's trying to bounce, so I don't want to be too bearish. The stock's still in a pretty good uptrend. It just tested its 40-week moving average, so test and a takeoff to the north side, that would be pretty good. If it just gets up to prior highs and rolls over, so back here it tests the 40-week, rallies back up and can't do anything, and then rolls down again. Always want to be careful when it can't break through the prior high. So anyway, we'll watch for that and see if it can get some upward action going there. Looking in on Kingfisher, home improvement retailer. I don't know the store, but I will say this. This is a nice little downtrend that just broke out last week. It looks like it wants to try and go higher. I like the way the SCTR is starting to improve. That looks pretty good to me. And what we see here on the PPO momentum is it's starting to turn up well above zero. I really like that. That to me is a pretty bullish place on the chart. So when I start to see that kind of behavior, that can be a scan that you want to run for. Is just I'm looking for weekly charts where the PPO is starting to turn back up above zero, and it can give you some of these pullback scenarios that. In this case, the stock topped out in late October, pulled back for the last quarter, 3, 4, 5 months, and now looks like it's starting to break out to the upside. So that looks pretty good to me. Moving on to Haverty Furniture, this is where some of the outperformance has been. This design space has just been crazy. These things have been rocketing higher, and what's wrong with that chart? I see nothing. The only thing that might be a small issue is the scooter ranking is now starting to drop to around 75, so I just want to make sure the trend continues. I don't really like that the PPO is starting to catch up here and just go flat, but it can go flat at this 10 to 15% level. If it can stay up there for a long time, that's just very bullish. So I don't want to get too pessimistic here. There's still a lot of potential strength in the chart. Tile Shop Holdings, same idea. I think they probably had to do some reverse splits here with the stock being so weak. I don't see one on the chart, but what I want to look for here is this. This is a pretty nice trend from a 10-cent stock to a $7 stock, and still looks continuing. The scooter ranking is still very strong up here at a nice high level, and PPO is again up here at a high level and just hovering sideways. So nothing to not like about the stock. It's okay. the bigger thing to notice is it was a terrible performing stock for years. Now all of a sudden it's got some wind. I think when this starts to let go, you just want to let it go and step aside. Again, the full stochastic trying to stay above 50 would be bullish. All in here, you can see most of the time it's spending below the 50% level. Had a few tries to kind of rally up and then fail right away. At least this time it's held up there for a while. This wouldn't be my preferred stock out of the group. There's just too many other names that don't have the, I'll call it, permanent damage done to the chart by being an underperformer for years. So Restoration Hardware looks a little bit weaker here, with a scooter ranking falling out of the top category and now into average. But I will say that this is a pretty reasonable place to expect bounces now. In this case, it took a few months for the bounce. This was within a month. This was a quick dip below, a quick dip below. So watch to see if we can get some strength here. I do want it to bounce around this 50 level. It has now moved below the 10-week moving average as it's rolling over. So it needs to come down here and start to push back up, in my opinion. I think it really needs to get going. The PPO is just gently trending down. It's not falling hard. And again, I mentioned on some of the other charts, when you're up at this high level, the stock can still continue higher, but it just can't continue higher at the rate of change it had before. So this is okay to watch for. I just want to see it start to rejuvenate itself relatively soon here. We'll see if it can do it on over the next month, if we can get call it a stronger backdrop across the entire market. So here's Lowe's, and the chart of Lowe's and Home Depot, I don't want to say they're typically the same, but I would like to see this really start to turn up here. Home Depot just had a big push for the last 2 weeks, much like Lowe's did here. As we're trying to get through this prior high, it's pretty much the same setup, but as we're trying to get through this prior high, I want to make sure it accelerates out of here and doesn't just roll over and fail at the prior top. We do have a downtrend in momentum. And again, a push through to the upside here, that would be something bullish that I'd be watching for. And just got a couple left here. Lumber liquidators pretty much rolled over under the 10-week, staying there, trying to hold the 40-week moving average. PPO is downtrending. I want to see that start to break and turn higher. Maybe a bounce right at the 50 or at the 0 level would be bullish enough to make that happen. Wayfair, the chart's been pretty strong. You can see here we get this horizontal resistance level. Needs to get through that. Scooter ranking gave up a while ago. The full stochastic is starting to turn back above 50, and that looks pretty strong. I have one thing here that we've got this downtrend that's been broken, but it hasn't really started to bounce with any sort of inertia. So I want to be careful here. If this is going to start to roll over and fall below both its 10-week and 40-week, I think that would confirm that the money's moving out of this, I'll call it home renovation growth, into whatever, trips and travel and whatever else. Here's Ethan Allen, the final chart in the group, which is home interior design or whatever. It's been a relatively weak stock for years, and it's now taken off to the moon here. It looks pretty good. If this was to start to fail, it's the charts like this that all of a sudden have been trending higher and really have trouble holding. We're seeing some clues in things like Wayfair, Home Depot, Lowe's, that they haven't been able to break through prior highs. So we want to see that sort of breakout happen. Hey, thanks for joining me. Don't forget about Chart Madness coming up next Monday. Thanks for taking the time to join me on Market Buzz. Market Buzz airs Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. You can also see the recordings on StockCharts TV YouTube page. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.